When a giant crocodile shows up near a small town in Sudan, the villagers can quickly determine that something is wrong with it. It is moving extremely slowly and the belly looks unnatural. In an attempt to save it, the animal was cut open, revealing the contents of the stomach. But once it was exposed, nobody could believe what was inside. Michael's heart was beating in his chest as he was slowly approaching the giant crocodile. He knows he is supposed to be the brave one, but he could barely contain his nerves. One wrong move and this could be the end of his story. But Michael knew what he had to do. His mind was made up. He wanted to save this animal. There was obviously something wrong with it, and the closer he got, the more obvious it became where the problem laid, in the animal's stomach. With surgical precision, the stomach of the crocodile was sliced open, after which its contents were immediately on display. Michael's jaw dropped to the floor. How was this possible? But was Michael in time to save the giant crocodile? What did he find inside of it, and why did he even feel the need to try and save this dangerous creature? In the muddy rivers of the Nile, crocodiles are not an uncommon sight whatsoever. They have been living here for many years. These apex perpetrators patrol the waters looking for their next meal, and locals are in a constant battle of survival with these extremely dangerous animals. Oftentimes, they avoid each other as much as possible. Children of local villagers are taught from an early age to stay away from the area where the crocodiles are most likely to be. Nothing good can come from a face-to-face confrontation. At least, that is what everybody always assumes. But one faithful day, Michael did something that no one in his family would have allowed if he had told them this beforehand. Michael decided to ignore all the warnings he had received over the years and the name of what he presumes to be the greater good. Michael is a 38-year-old man who has lived in a small village in Sudan all his life. This is also the place where he met his wife, with whom he started a family. They have been living together for about 12 years now. It isn't the best possible life, but it could be a lot worse. The village is close to the Nile River, and Michael's family has a small farm on which they can produce enough food to sustain themselves almost 3 times over. This means he also has the ability to help out other people in his village, making him immensely popular there. Michael is perceived as an amazing person by the villagers, but he also has a reputation for another noteworthy personality trait of his fearlessness. His family in particular knows this better than anyone. But the fact is that in Sudan, dangers are never far away. Most of the time, Michael was successful in his actions, and the town loved him for it. You could almost say he was their unofficial leader. And that is why, when this particular situation arose recently, they all turned to Michael to decide what to do next. Even though the small village was close to the Nile, they didn't have to deal with threats from the water like crocodiles or hippopotamuses often. They mostly just stayed in the river. The villagers also know they should not come too close to certain stretches of the river. In this way, they avoid danger. Until this day. Today, one of these dangerous creatures had ventured its way beyond the river bed. This had never happened since Michael lived in the village. That the animal had come out of the river was already a problem, but there was more to it. It positioned itself in one of the worst possible posts. An absolutely enormous crocodile with a belly as big as any of the villagers had ever seen had crawled out of the river, and there was a big problem. It laid itself down in the passage the villagers had made to let water flow from the Nile to their farms. The crocodile was blocking almost all of the water now, meaning their crops were not getting enough water. This could become a big problem, especially if the crocodile would stay here for a long time. This wasn't immediately noticed, but the village would discover the problem soon enough. Some women were going to the river to wash their clothes. There they spotted the giant creature. They were in shock, but then they found something out. After taking a better look, they saw the crocodile was blocking their water supply. The women immediately turned to Michael to figure out a solution. Michael immediately came into action. There was no time to lose. With a couple of other men from the village, he went to check it out. It quickly became apparent how tricky this situation actually was. The crocodile didn't look like it was going to move anytime soon. The women had already told Michael how much trouble the animals normally seemed to have getting out of the river. It was a miracle this giant animal had ended up in this place. Michael could now also see for himself that almost every movement this giant crocodile made seemed to be in slow motion. Moving the crocodile on their own was also not an option. Even if it was too lethargic to move and hurt them, it was still a big risk, and on top of that, this specimen seems way too big to be just pushed aside. There had to be another option. A lot of options were discussed between the villagers, and one of the most prominently suggested ideas was to kill the animal and get everybody to help move it after that. But Michael was very much against this. The idea could work, but it went against his principles. From a young age, Michael was taught the value of life, and killing this abnormally large crocodile would be an unnecessary waste in his eyes. He could not accept this. Plus, he had also noticed something when examining the animals from a bit of a distance. Michael had seen many crocodiles in his day, and by the way this one was acting and looking out of his eyes, he could tell that it was very much unwell. He wanted to help this animal. He felt he had to do something. Michael couldn't let the animal suffer like this. Luckily, Michael knew exactly who to contact for this problem. A couple weeks ago, a visitor had come to the city to discuss with them how they dealt with problems involving wild animals. This came in very handy now. This man could help Michael to save this giant crocodile. The man was a wildlife conservative and had tried to convince them to avoid killing large and rare animals as much as possible, and if they really had a problem, that they should call him first. So that's what Michael did. He called the man to ask for his help. The wildlife conservator named Jason had come to Sudan from the UK and was tasked with preserving the life of rare animals as much as possible. He knew that there were many of these animals around Michael's village. That was the reason why he had visited this place a few weeks ago. When he heard the story about the apparent giant crocodile near the small village, he was very excited to see it. However, he would not come much farther as a picture and video, seeing as he was currently about 2 days away from the location. The villagers could not wait that long to get their water supply back working. They needed to do something new, and with the news that Jason would not be able to make it to them in time, the idea of killing the crocodile was back on the table again. Not only would it provide a quick solution to their problem, but it would also give the villagers some extra food for the next couple of days. This animal was so big that the whole village could feast from it. It would also make up for some of the lost harvest due to the lack of water. Jason begged and pleaded to let the animal live, even promising to send some additional food packages to the village as a reward. Many villagers felt like ignoring Jason's advice and going ahead with their plan, but there was one person to heed Jason's words: Michael. Michael was already determined to save the animal, but now that he knew it would also most likely strengthen his connection with people who could actually help bring positive long-term change to the village. Michael has been trying to bring about this positive change for a long time. This was the ideal opportunity. Killing this animal would be great in the short term, but that is never how Michael thought about a situation. Michael is a person who can oversee situations well and thinks about long-term consequences. There was a reason he was the unofficial leader of the village. After some convincing, the village, some reluctantly, agreed with Michael. But now that they had decided to save the animal, one big question remained: how? Jason could only be in the village in 2 days. That would take too long. They had to think of another solution. Jason knew a lot about big game animals, but also knew when he needed a specialist to advise him. That was now. He knew who to talk to in this situation. He got the leading vet of the gator world in the US on the line for a video call with Michael. This way they could show her the animal, and she could hopefully advise them on what to do next. Michael started walking around the animal, filming it, so that the vet could examine it as best as possible. He did this very carefully. It was still a life-threatening animal that they were trying to save. The connection between Michael and the vet was very poor. Fortunately, this was not a problem. Despite the poor connection and bad camera quality, the vet managed to quickly determine what was most likely causing the animal's problems. She tried to explain it to Michael as well as he could. After taking a good look at the crocodile, the vet was able to quickly identify what was probably wrong with the animal. Its stomach had a very unnatural bulge to bite, and by where the bulge was located, the vet determined that something was most likely blocking the entrance to the crocodile's stomach. The crocodile had most likely swallowed something that it could not digest. This could be making the animal very sick and explain why it was unable to move. It simply had no energy anymore. But what had this crocodile swallowed? And what could Michael and the other villagers do to solve this problem? The vet informed Michael that the only way they would be able to save this animal is by getting this unknown object out of the crocodile. Someone would have to carefully cut the crocodile open and extract the object. This was a very dangerous job. Who was going to do it? Michael told the other villagers what the vet had said. He felt the eyes of everybody in the village immediately land on him. He knew that none of them were going to be willing to take this risk. And he could not blame them one bit. Michael would have to cut open the crocodile himself. No one else would do the job. Luckily, he did manage to convince the other villagers to help restrain the crocodile. This was very important for Michael's safety. They went back to the village to get the necessary supplies. The villagers gathered a lot of stuff. Ropes to tie up the mouth and cloth to put over its eyes. They'd also planned to pin its body down on the ground by pulling ropes over the animal and then pinning these ropes in the ground. This was to ensure that the crocodile could not move. The villagers had returned to the crocodile and started tying it up according to the plan. It was a big operation, but the crocodile barely put up any kind of fight. Even more evidence of the bad condition it was in. When Michael felt like it was safe enough, he went to work. The vet was still on the video connection, and another villager filmed Michael so that the vet could give him instructions. This way, Michael knew what he had to do to save the crocodile. With a knife that they had first placed in the fire to kill any bacteria, Michael made the first small incision. Luckily, the crocodile barely had any reaction to this, and Michael didn't have to get very deep to find the obstruction. After 2 more cuts, he gained entrance to the entrance of the stomach. The object that was stuck in the crocodile was immediately pushed out of the hole. Michael could barely believe it. Out of the crocodile came an old blue football. He had not seen this coming. He was very confused as to where the crocodile could have found this. Nobody in his village was missing a ball. Who knows how long it was already blocking its stomach? There was no time to wonder about this now. Michael needed to quickly stitch up the insides of the crocodile before taping the leathery skin shut as much as possible. The vet was still in contact with Michael. He instructed him on how to proceed. Michael followed the last instructions of the vet. While he was doing this, some villagers went to get some older fish for the animal to eat so they could lure it out of the stream. When they got back, the animal was already freed from its ropes. It was obvious that it already seemed more lively than before the operation. The villagers put out a trail of the old fish leading to the water, and the crocodile slowly but eagerly started following it, freeing up the stream of water again. The villagers' plants were watered again, so the harvest was not ruined. Michael was already on the phone with Jason to tell him the good news, and he was immediately promised that his village would be spending a load of extra food and supplies as a thank you for the effort. Everyone in the village was overjoyed when Michael told them the good news. Michael had risked his life for this endeavor, but it had all worked out in the end in the best way possible. His village was much better off than before, and he had very much strengthened his position as their leader. The crocodile is swimming in the river again, and the animal is in good condition.